Hello, and welcome to this webinar, Using ARIA for RI-VIS, Networks, Forums, Content, and more. My name is Natalie, and I'll be presenting today. I'm the project manager for the RI-VIS project, and I also work as part of the ARIA team at Instruct-ERIC, the structural biology research infrastructure which develops the ARIA software. RI-VIS is a project looking to expand the visibility of research infrastructures to new communities within Europe, and also to encourage new international collaborations. As part of RI-VIS Work Package 4, we're looking to adapt and improve the current tools provided by ARIA for greater impact for international communities. We're also looking to develop more outreach tools under the ARIA umbrella. Hopefully today, you'll be able to get an idea of what ARIA can provide for communities, and perhaps this will give you ideas on what we can improve or create to achieve our goals. Do please get in touch with any ideas or suggestions, anything that occurs to you whilst watching this webinar or whilst using ARIA. This webinar is currently being broadcast on YouTube Live. We want it to be interactive, so we've integrated a quick submission form where you can post at any time questions and answers for me to answer as a speaker, and I'll answer them at the end of the webinar. We'll also keep the form open for a few days after the webinar, which will be open until Monday, where you can choose to submit a question after the webinar if it occurs to you at a later point, and we'll get back to you if you leave your name and email address. Obviously, if you don't leave those details, we won't be able to follow up. If you have more than one question, use the link on the page to open another question and answer form. Submissions are anonymous unless you choose to leave your name and email address. So, onto the webinar. When you first come to ARIA via the RI-VIS website or via any other ARIA site, such as the Instruct-ERIC website, you will see the options to log in and possibly also a separate option to register. Clicking the login button will take you to a page where you can log in with an existing account or register for a new account. So we'll see that process in action now. The user is clicking on the register page to create a new account. The registration form is pretty similar to other registration forms you'll see elsewhere. You need an email address and a password. If you scroll down further, you'll see project selection. Here we're selecting the RI-VIS project because the person who's interested in using ARIA wants to use it for RI-VIS. At the bottom, you'll see some options for mailing lists that you can subscribe to at the same point as registering this account. You can change your subscription at any time using your ARIA profile. Above in the selection of projects, you were shown each project had a privacy policy link. So when selecting that project, you're agreeing to the privacy policy for that project. So now you have an ARIA account, you can access the administration pages in ARIA rather than just the public-facing web pages. To get to the admin panel, as we call it, look for the Your Admin button in the center of the bottom bar on your screen, or go to the URL here, which ends /ADM. What you see on this next page will depend on your permissions and roles within the ARIA system, but all users will see in the top left of the panel their avatar and a link to edit their profile, a button linking to their internal messages, and options to expand the sidebar or contract the sidebar, that's the 3 lines, and a logout button. Beneath your profile avatar, you'll see 5 navigation tabs. These are the tabs that you'll see. The 5 sidebar navigation tabs simplify finding your way around ARIA by grouping similar actions together under a tab. For example, the Submission tab, marked by a box here, covers anything to do with proposals or call applications submitted, including the peer review assessment of these applications. The Facility tab, marked by a building here, covers anything to do with facility management. So this might be booking calendar functions or visits to facility, managing visits and things like that. The tab we're most interested in today is the Content tab, which is the one marked by a book, because this contains the community communication and dissemination tools and content and some other functions that we might not go into too much detail about in this particular webinar. So here you see the expanded tab for the Content tab. And at the very top, we see networks, which we'll be covering in quite a lot of detail today. But any of these objects usually has a way to add a new one and a way to edit. In this case, edit is manage and create is add, but you might see add or edit in other places in ARIA. Most of the time, you'll probably want to edit something that's already existing. So in this case, manage network. When you click manage network, you'll then be taken to a page where you see a table, and this is typical of any edit page in ARIA. In the table, you can filter the list of objects, which are all objects you have the permission to edit, by searching. For example, we've searched for RI-VIS here, and we've got one result, which is the RI-VIS network. In the ARIA configuration tables, in the right-hand column, we've got a column called Actions, and this is where we group together all of the actions that we would be able to do to that particular object. And as the main button, we've always got a key option that's selected. So in this case, it's Manage Network. This is usually the one that's most likely to be the thing you'd like to do. Although if there are other things you'd like to do, they'll usually be found in the drop-down menu at the side of the button. So here, Manage Network is the key option, but things like Delete Network might be a drop-down option. Back to the profile. Your profile view is restricted to protect your personal data so that only people associated with applications you've submitted and system administrators and you yourself will be able to see your profile. This page shows what your profile would look like to the people who have permission to see it. To edit your profile, follow any button labeled Edit Profile, such as the one we mentioned in the top left of the admin panel view by your avatar. So this is the Edit Profile page. You'll notice that you can connect to an ORCID account and import fields that way, such as publications. We're just scrolling past the thing in green as a publication there. At the bottom, you'll see the familiar project selections and mailing list subscriptions. And at the bottom, we're just looking at a mailing subscription preferences setting. So you can have ARIA messages on or off, depending on your personal preferences. More information about messaging. As we've just seen, message notifications can be turned on or off in your profile. We've recently overhauled the messaging system to make it far more user-friendly, including allowing users to reply to ARIA messages directly from their email client without having to open ARIA itself. This feature isn't yet available, but will be released during the summer at a later date. So if you want to make use of this feature, make sure you've got notifications turned on in anticipation. The interface in ARIA should appear similar to what you're used to from your email client. ARIA messages can be generated on the click of a button as well as through the messaging interface. So clicking certain buttons at relevant points in a workflow will generate pre-populated messages with the relevant people and with informative titles and IDs. So an example of this is if you were a scientific user going on a visit to a facility, you might see at certain points in your workflow Contact Service Technology button, and this would generate a message thread with the ID of your visit and pre-populated with all of the people who work at the facility that you're visiting. And they would be able to generate the same thread by seeing Contact User buttons. Here we see an example of the messaging interface. The short view of each message in your inbox can be seen in the Inbox tab, so that's here. And you can see any messages you've sent in the Sent tab. In the Either tab, the currently selected message will be shown in dark teal. Right-clicking a message allows you to flag it or mark it as unread, as we see here. So that's right-clicking this message. To see who's participating in a message, you can click in the corner where you see the icon of people. This brings up the message participants table. The message participants table, the current view we're looking at is for someone who's an administrator. You might see a simpler view of this table if you're not an administrator. So in the name column, the administrator can see everybody, but if you were a regular user and the hidden column was selected, you would see the hidden name in place of the actual name of the person to protect people's identities. So other key buttons, obviously this is the reply button. Another way to flag a message is using the flag button, and vitally, create a new message is this pencil button by the side of the search messages bar. Now on to networks. Networks are communities within ARIA which can have their own content and even pages. Pages can be made to have a distinct look and feel via custom styling, so in effect, a network can be a website managed within ARIA. Permission controls over content and management can be controlled by network administrators. The RI-VIS website is an example of an ARIA network in action. Other projects which have recently used the ARIA network platform to host their sites and communities include Westlife and Instruct-ERIC, and there are more coming soon. Here you can see the Manage Network page, which we navigated to through the admin panel as shown earlier. The network dashboard shows an overview of the content currently in the network, including network-specific news, events, jobs, and pages in those 4 tables. As in other ARIA tables, you can use the Actions button to quickly navigate to edit existing content from this page. Navigate to other pages within the network management area using the bar at the top. So there's a series of options, and click on one of these to move to the relevant area. The configuration button on the far right-hand side will take you to the basic configuration settings for the network. Importantly, this is where you set things like the home page and the navigation menu layout for the website. Here is an example of editing the RI-VIS website menu. What we see is a side-by-side configuration page and the website homepage with the menu at the top. So we're adding a page called Privacy Policy, which I've already created, a link to that page, and it's internal. We go back to Configure Network and we see that that link has been added to the bottom of the list of links in the configuration page. And if we refresh the page, we see that it's been added to the very end of the menu, corresponding to the order we set in the network links. To change the order of the link, we can drag and drop it to a different position up and down. And we can also move it side to side to decide whether it's nested within another link or not to be a submenu item. So here we're putting it as a submenu item of documents. And if we refresh the page, we'll see a little arrows appeared beside documents. And if we hover over, we can see the privacy policy link is a submenu item of documents as we specified in the links section. To access restricted network content, you need to be a member of a network. When you're not logged in, or if you're logged in with ARIA but not yet a member of the network, you'll see the Join Network link in the menu bar. Clicking this will present you with a button to apply to join the network. You'll be prompted to log in if you've not already. After clicking the button, you'll see this message saying that you've successfully applied to join the network. At this point, an administrator will need to approve or reject your membership request. And this is how that would be done in the management page. Administrators see a list of users waiting to be approved. Here, a user called Test is awaiting approval. Clicking the Approve button would move Test into the middle table of network users. Administrators are shown in the third table. The request could alternatively be rejected by using the drop-down menu in Existing network members and administrators can be removed in the same way using the drop-down menus in their respective tables. And you might want to do this, for example, if a network administrator had left their current position in their organization and no longer worked on the project, they probably shouldn't be administrating the network anymore. One example of an area users will not be able to access without being a member of the network is the RI-VIS forum. Note that this is configurable, the permissions for forum access, and we could have opened the forums to non-members, but we chose not to in this case. Other networks may have set their forum positions slightly differently. Here you see the RI-VIS forums. We have one sub-forum for each work package and a top-level forum for things that don't fit in a single work package. Each forum can have multiple topics, which are discussion threads. Here at the bottom, we see a thread in the top level RI-VIS forum on forum rules. Topics, posts, and latest activity are shown for forums, subforums, and topics in these tables here. So here we see a user navigating to Work Package 4 forum and adding a brand new topic. The forum's empty apart from this topic that's being added now. The topic's on an ARIA introduction webinar, and they're typing in their content here, and they're adding the topic. And then they'll see the topic has now been added to the topic table. Returning to that topic, because this is the user that posted that thread, they'll have the option to delete their post, or they can reply to it using the editor at the bottom and post reply. This is the forum configuration page for the RI-VIS network. Forums can be arranged in the same sort of interface we saw for the menu links. So I think what you'll be seeing in ARIA is that lots of the functionality is used in multiple places across the admin panel, so it's familiar to you even if you haven't used that particular area before. And link rearrangement and nesting and stuff is all managed in the same way with this drag and drop. The document gallery is a useful way of sharing files within the network or publicly. Each folder can have customizable permissions, as can individual files within the folders, which enables the dissemination level for each document to be set appropriately. As a simple demo of this, here you see the document page for a user who is not logged in at the top, and the same page for a network member who is logged into ARIA at the bottom. The user who's not logged in is only able to see publicly shared documents and folders. In this case, these are the RI-VIS logos, which we share publicly for use of our logo by other communities who might want to publish it. The user who's logged in can also see this deliverable folder and files and meeting folders and files in addition to the public logos. Here is a demonstration of how you browse the document folders in ARIA. At first, you'll see all files in all subfolders that you're able to access with your current permissions. If you click on a particular folder name, which is a hyperlink, it will show you all the folders within that particular all the files within that particular folder. And if you click on a subfolder name, it will show you all the files within that subfolder. If you see a little plus icon in the bottom corner of the folder, then you can expand it to be able to see what subfolders are in that folder. If it doesn't have a plus icon, it doesn't have any subfolders, or it's open. Notice that navigating on the left-hand side and opening and closing folders doesn't change what's shown in the table. You need to actually click on the link to get to the table. Here we've clicked on a link of an actual file, and that brings you to the download page. So we've downloaded the logo with the tagline, and there we have the file. Adding documents and folders must be done in the admin panel on the Add Network Documents page. Adding folders using the form on the top left is quite straightforward, as is adding a network document using the adjacent form. When adding folders, select the parent folder to ensure the correct nesting. So you want to make sure that the folder is in the correct folder itself. User access is quite vital because this is where you set the permissions. It allows you to pick users and groups who have permission to access the folder. And if you leave this field empty, you are making the document publicly accessible. The same applies for files. Files and folders can also be hidden, which means that they don't appear in the display, but this doesn't prevent the folders from being accessed by those with the appropriate permissions. For files, the Upload File button here is used to select your file itself. Underneath, we see the familiar folder browser that we just went through and the file table. And the difference in this case is that instead of just browsing, we're able to see the action column as we see elsewhere in the admin panel, and we're able to remove and edit documents. Aside from documents and forums, we also add other content to our network, such as events, jobs, and news. The way that this works on the public-facing web page is we have a list page for each of these 3 content types. So what you see on the left is the list page for events. So it's showing events, and each event title is a hyperlink to a page specifically for that event. So this is an example of an individual news page, this is an example of an individual event page, and this is an example of an individual job page. Now, going back to the event page, here, one thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the fact that we've got an event contact. Now, this is a crucial feature because you might want to talk to somebody about the event you're interested in attending, or for further information. So by clicking that contact name, which is a hyperlink, it will bring up a form like this, which you can write an email to the contact person and submit it without you ever being shown their email address. That's hidden from you, but the message is sent to them through the system. This page here is the Add News page. The fields required to set up news, events and jobs are broadly similar, so I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail about it, but there are a few subtle differences in the fields. All have a title, a URL, which is generated from the title, what you see is what you get editor for the main content, and a configurable tags list. They'll also have a date. The kind of date depends on the kind of item. So for news, that will default to today's date, and it's the date the news piece was posted. For an event, an important field is this contact field we just went over earlier, which is the name of the person who will be the contact point for the event. This person is selected from people who are registered within ARIA. So if the contact person is not registered within ARIA, we would either encourage them to do so or put a proxy contact person in their place who can get in touch with the real contact person if they receive any requests. We also have a external link field, it's this one here, where if the event is an event from another project or something and it has a link of its own elsewhere on the web, we can put that link in here. So the location setting, obviously that's vital to know where the event is happening, unless it's happening online. But it also is used to generate a map pin. So if you put in the location, you can press this calculate latitude longitude button and it will generate the correct location for the pin for you. And it will also set the time zone. Obviously, we need to, if we're working on international projects, we'll all be in different time zones and we need to make sure that we're all turning up to the events at the right time. So having the time zone setting here is also quite a crucial feature. Jobs that will obviously have a closing date, a contact person and an organisation that the job is to be for. They can also display the job location on a map, just like the events. So now we come to pages. Pages are individual web pages which are part of the network website. They're customizable by designated individuals or groups, and view access for each page can also be configured, although in our case, most of the pages that we create, in fact, all of them at the moment, are open to the public. To add a page in your network, you do so by using the Create page in the network configuration. You see it's a very, very simple form here. You type in the title, it generates a URL. We'll have a look at an example of that here. So this person is adding a new page called test page. They're clicking the hidden button, which means that only people who have edit permission for that page will be able to see it for now, which is useful while you're working on a page because you don't want it to go public just yet. Now they're demonstrating the navigation through the network page. They've found a link to edit content. They could also edit details, which is how they go to unhide it. In the bottom corner of any page you have permission to edit, you'll see an edit page button. So click that, and then you'll be presented with these elements. So grid elements are required before you can add any other elements. They're the kind of master element, and they're used to choose the layout of the page. So you can see here this grid element has been dragged and dropped onto the page and can be resized. So to resize the grid element, you click on the far right hand side and drag it to the correct size. And if you drag it small enough, two next to each other, you can have a couple of columns. So now we've added a block element to that grid element. Block elements are the most useful type of block, which is the kind of thing we put in a grid, basically because the block element gives you what you see is what you get editor. So you need to save the page and re-edit it in order to activate this block element. Click the edit pencil. You see the editor was resized there for convenience. Resizing the editor doesn't actually change the size of the final block, but it might make it easier to edit. You can use the tools at the top of the what you see is what you get editor to change things like heading styles and to add all sorts of features. You can add images, you can add bullet points, you can add tables, all sorts of things. So here's an example of adding a link. If you select the text you want to hyperlink, click the chain link button, add the URL that you want to link to, and target at the bottom allows you to specify if it opens in a new window or not. So this one will be opening in a new window. All of the functions here create some HTML for that particular block. And if you're competent in HTML editing, click the angle bracket like the example just did, and you can make edits directly to the HTML by pressing OK there. So save the changes, and that's what the page looks like. Going back to editing, have a look at some other block types. So this is a contact block. It is very similar functionally to the to the event contact person block. So you put in an email address here. It hides the email address from the user, but provides a form where you can send an email to that email address. So here's an example of somebody trying to use that block. They put in the subject and the message, and because they're logged in, we know who they are, so we'll fill in that extra data. If they weren't logged in, they'd have to fill in a captcha and a couple more fields like their name. So now we're adding another grid element and another kind of block. So this time we're adding an events list. The events list will give a list of all events in ARIA by default. And we probably aren't interested in a lot of those, so we would want to filter it down to the events that are just in our network. So our network has ID 23, so we put any NID equals 23, network ID is 23, and tag RI-VIS. Oh, and look, there's nothing there. That's probably because the tag is wrong, so we'll try a different tag. If we put RI-VIS, then we might see some more results. Yes, so now we've got 3 results because we set the limit to 3. If we set the limit higher, we'd see more events if we had more events than 3, that is. So adding another grid element to test out a new type of block. This time we'll put in a Twitter feed. So you can scroll through all of these different block items, options, and we've got Twitter embedded timeline. This is the one we want. And we put in our Twitter handle. We can change the width and height, but we'll leave them at default for now. And you see a built-in Twitter timeline. And that updates as Twitter updates. Outside of the network environment in ARIA, there are some other key features which are used by communities for communication. The first of these is a survey tool. The survey tool is found in the configuration tab rather than the content tab. Here we're creating a survey, adding the title, but the from email address is the email address that invitation emails will be sent from if you choose a type of survey that creates email invitations. Administrators are the people who can edit the survey and view the survey results and reports. 3 different types of submission type. Email submission, where you put comma-separated email addresses, then invitations are sent to all of these email addresses with unique links, which allow each email address to provide their own response. If you do login required, then you can select from ARIA users or user groups to be able to fill in the survey. Or link only allows you to send a link yourself to people, and anyone with that link can click it to respond to the survey. You can select a date range for the survey to be open for, opening and closing. This can be extended at a later date if you want to make your survey last a bit longer, if you want to give people a few more days to respond. Then we come on to the actual survey content. You can import an existing survey or you can start afresh. So if we do copy existing layout, then that will take an existing survey as your survey, or you can use custom form fields. If you select custom form fields, even individual fields can be imported rather than a whole survey by selecting them there. But if you want to create them from scratch, leave it as custom field and click on the configuration tab. Then we add the field name in here, which is the question that the user will see in the survey. We've got a wide list of field types that you can choose from. So things like text, number, yes, no, drop-down list, file, upload, checkboxes. So we're choosing drop-down list in this instance. Help text appears if you click the help question mark. And because we selected drop-down list, that's given us the option to add not comma separated as usual, because you might have a comma in your options. And we can set a maximum length for the other field because we select drop-down list with other. Required means they have to answer it. Multiple means they can select multiple options in their answer. So once you've added your first field, you need to go back to the edit survey page to be able to add subsequent fields. So the second field, now you can see we can add a second field at the bottom. And we'll do a numeric field this time. So we'll select number. And this gives us, instead of options, we've got minimum and maximum, which sets the range for that numeric value to be in. Again, help text, useful if you add help text for people. And then scroll down to the bottom of this page. You don't have to completely re-navigate to it this time to add third, fourth, fifth, sixth, subsequent fields, etc. But we'll leave it at that for now. So to answer the link-only survey, we would distribute this link. If you had one of the other survey types, you'd send the surveys using the ARIA system. But we're trying the link one now. And then anyone who's responding will see a page like this. And this is how they'd make their selection. So they've selected green and yellow as their colors. And for the numeric field, you've got a little arrow at the side, so you can choose a number in the correct range. It won't let you go outside of that, but you can put decimals in. And your response has been successfully recorded. So after that, after all the responses are collected, we'd want to return to see the results. As administrators, we'd be able to do that. So we go to Manage Surveys again, and now you see the primary action is Survey Report. This brings you to a report which shows you a graphical display of certain fields if they're appropriate types. So we've seen one person is in that range, and means and medians are calculated as well. If you click All Responses, you see each individual response to that question. If you don't want to see the survey report, you can select in the drop-down, instead of Survey Report, you can select responses, and then you can view on a response by response level. So person 1 answers to all of the questions that person 1 answered, or then person 2 answers to all of the questions that person 2 answered. So whichever way you want to look at the data, you can look at the data. All of the data in ARIA can be exported conveniently using these buttons at the bottom corner of the table. So copy, CSV export, PDF export, and print. And that is true anywhere in the system, not just for surveys. Elsewhere in ARIA, we have our CRM tool, which is also useful for communicating with communities. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Manager and is essentially a tool for managing and sending emails to customers. Emails can have different templates, just like web pages. So an example of that is this is a RI-VIS templated email. You can see the logo there, and the color palette matches the RI-VIS styling. It can be customized even more than this if you have those desires. CRMs can be used to send emails to GDPR compliant mailing lists. So we've shown how you can subscribe to mailing lists in your profile and at registration. But when you're subscribed to a mailing list and you receive an email, it will provide you with a convenient link in the footer to change your mail preferences as well. So clicking on the link in the footer would take you to a page like this one. where you can change your mail settings without even having to log in. So it brings up your current mail settings and you can change the checkboxes on and off to subscribe or unsubscribe to lists and save the changes, and that will be respected by the CRM tool. Another convenient feature of the CRMs is that they have link tracking built in. So if you put where you've put your email content, so here, you have any links, when you send the email, they will be tracked. So we'll generate tracking versions of those links for you. And we can tell you how many clicks each particular link has had. So here's an example of that for an email we sent earlier this year. And you can see that some links are far more popular than others to users, and this could be used to improve your email content and stuff like that based on feedback from the link tracking results. So a really good example here, we've got 2 links to the same website, but one of them only has 2 hits and the other one has 65. So obviously one of them was positioned in a place where it was far more likely to get attention from the users. So that concludes the webinar for today, and we'll be moving on to the question and answer session shortly. I hope that's been informative to you, and if you've got any suggestions for improvement or anything like that, please do get in touch. We're really willing to hear from you, and your suggestions might just make it into ARIA for the future. So now we'll start by answering a few questions. If you could bear with me for a second. If you have more questions, keep them coming in on the question and answer form that we've provided on the website. So first question. We use ARIA for transnational access, so I've used the administration side, but I've never seen the options you have covered today, e.g. surveys. How do I make a survey if I can't see the options? Okay, that's a very good question, actually. The answer, maybe you heard it earlier in the webinar, is permissions. So when you get into the admin panel, if you were a user of the access tools, then you'd see quite a lot in the submissions tab and maybe some stuff in the facility tab, but you wouldn't see much in the content tab because that isn't to do with the areas that you've been granted permission. So we've got role-based permissions and we've got area-specific permissions. So if you actually wanted to try out some of these tools, we would need to grant those permissions for you in the first instance. Somebody who does have the permission to create a survey could add you as an administrator, and then you'd be able to manage that survey. And that can happen without any special permissions because you're being given permission for that particular survey. And then you should see it appearing in your menu. So that's sort of the answer. You don't have permissions at the moment, but if you want permissions, please get in touch. My email address is on the screen right now, or Natalie@Instruct-ERIC.eu also works. This brings to mind actually that we have a test site. So if you want to try out these features, don't currently have permission, maybe we could give you access to our test site and you would be able to try them out before you use them for real, before you make anything live. So I would advise that kind of course of action. Again, get in touch to be added to our test site. Okay, so hopefully that covers that question. If not, please resubmit further questions, follow-up questions if you'd like. So I've got another question here. What is the process for submitting a survey to be sent to all of the RI-VIS group? Okay, so to send a survey to the RI-VIS group, if you're thinking of the group in ARIA, then we could use a login only survey. So that was one of the survey types that we had. But that requires everybody to be registered in ARIA. And then we can send it to the network group, which is automatically created from the list of network members. So that would be one way to do it. Say, for example, not everybody was registered in ARIA. You might want to use an email only survey and then enter the emails yourself. Or alternatively, you could do a link survey and send the survey via an external mailing list, for example. The disadvantage of the link survey, obviously, is that the responses are anonymous. You could ask people to provide their name to make it not anonymous, but by default they're anonymous, and we can't confirm for certain that the person who's responding to the survey is the person they say they are, whereas we can with the other 2 survey types. Okay, more questions. Can I log in with my institutional ID? So, okay, good question. And the answer is probably. Not a very good answer, actually. So if your institution is part of Edugain, you might not have heard of Edugain, but you've probably seen places like on journal websites where you can log in with your own institution. If you can do that on other websites, you can probably do it on ours as well, because those organizations have signed up to this federation, Edugain, and that is integrated into our system. So yes, you can log in with your institutional ID, and that means you don't have to remember another username, another password. When you use your institutional login, we will ask for a few extra fields. So there are some that were not provided by your institution. So you still have to fill in some of this registration form, for example, the projecty stuff, but otherwise, yes, you probably can't log in with your institution. But if you can't, if your institution isn't listed, then you can always create an ARIA account as anybody. Okay. Next question. Can I just use the booking module? So we didn't actually, this was probably a pre-submitted question. We didn't actually cover the booking module in very much detail. I passed over it when I was saying what was in the facility tab, but today we only looked at a tiny proportion of the features in ARIA, those to do with communities. We also have a lot of tools to do with facility, like booking, calendar options, which might also be useful to communities. You could use an instrument booking calendar, for example, for a booking for a meeting room or something. So yeah, that is quite a useful tool. And the answer to can I just use the booking module is yes. Get in touch with us to talk about it and what would be required from you. If you're competent with it, then we can set you up pretty quickly. We can also offer some assistance on how to use these features. If you're new to it, we can provide one-to-one training. Obviously, the terms of this depend on what we agree with you. But yeah, please do get in touch if you're interested in using it. Okay. How do I make my own styling? Okay, so there's another good question. You don't make your own styling in ARIA. I mean, obviously, you can create styling outside of ARIA, and what we would normally do for you if you came on board as a customer or as a partner, then we would work to match the styling. Say you had content already somewhere else online, we'd try and copy and duplicate that styling so that you can integrate features of ARIA in with your own existing styling or your own branding. But we don't currently offer a way for you to make the styling yourself. So you'd have to get in touch with us and we'd do it on a kind of bespoke basis, but we can apply the styling to your network and to things like that. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Can I host my community in ARIA? Very much yes, get in touch with us and talk to us about it. We're very keen to have new people using the tool. We're in discussions with various people about using it at the moment, and we'd be keen to talk to you. Yeah, please get in touch. Is ARIA only available to Instruct partners? I think you probably got an idea of what I'm going to say as an answer to the question, because I keep asking people to get in touch. And no, it's not only available to Instruct partners. Obviously, Instruct partners use it. I guess one thing is, what do you mean by Instruct partners? So Instruct is a European research infrastructure, and we have certain member countries, but people who are not from member countries can also use ARIA. You just get in touch with us and talk to us about how we get you on board as ARIA user. Yeah, and anyone can register for an ARIA account, but to use some of these extra features, yeah, obviously you'd need to be granted permissions and things, so we would need to have a chat with you about that, but we're very happy to. Okay. So that is the end of the list of questions. Oh no, one more question, sorry. Can someone save a survey they're midway through and come back to it later? And I'm very happy to say the answer to this question is yes, but not for all survey types. The link-only survey, obviously because it's submitted anonymously, when somebody comes back to it, you wouldn't know who they are anymore, so they can't change it. But the other two survey types, which are kind of identifiable individuals answering the survey, the email submission and the login required one, they can come back using the same link or by being logged into the same ARIA account and edit their responses up until the point the survey is submitted, if the survey is configured to do that. Obviously, as the survey administrator, you can turn that off so that people can't change their answers, or you can turn it on so they can. Yeah. And I think that really is the last question. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and thank you very much for the questions. I hope this has been informative to you and maybe inspired you to have a go with an ARIA network. If you've got any ideas for new features that we can add to networks, new blocks we can add, new types of things you'd like to see, or if you want to have a go, then please get in touch. Thank you and goodbye.